When it comes right down to it, the best word I can describe of my upbringing in church was just a lot of hypocrisy. I just experienced a lot of the power struggles. And part of that was when you have parents that were actively involved in the churches, you know, you kind of saw the behind the scenes stuff. People getting angry with each other, not being very Christian, a lot of division, a lot of fighting. We're going to pretend to be good Christians one way, or at least where everybody sees it. And then again, hypocrisy. It just, so growing up, that was my struggle. God was always part of life. Jesus was always part of life. I never doubted. You know, I always had belief. I always knew the gospel and all those things. But I just got to the point where I looked at church and I was like, I want nothing to do with this. I want nothing to do with these people. As far as the adults that I saw. So come my teenage years, I did what you hear a lot of people doing. I was just like, I'm out, I'm done. I want nothing to do with it. Still attended church, but it was just more because there was friends there. So it was like, you know, we were actually going to church over in Toddville. That's where my friends were, so that's the only reason we went to church, or at least I went to church. Mom and Dad forced me to go. There was a good number of years where, you know, alcohol and other things came into life, and doing stupid things was the norm, and actively and knowingly living against what Jesus said, but yet going to church on a Sunday and everybody's still like, oh, look at how great, you know, he is, and the gifts that he has and whatever it is, and finding reasons like, let me get up and sing, and just getting that praise. So that I can see how I perpetuated. I became the hypocrisy that I was so frustrated with. But the story on how I kind of started, how God started to bring me back in was we were attending church in Toddville, and one of my very good friends at the time was my quote-unquote sin partner, in the sense of we would go do things with things, you know, like partying and stuff. And one night we were, it was probably 2 a.m, and we were not in a good condition as far as what we had been doing. And I looked at him and I said, it was a Saturday night, and I said, dude, you got to get me home. I got to go to church in the morning. That's how, I mean, that's the hypocrisy of it. It was like, you know, I got to go to church in the morning. And he looked at me and he said, well, I'm not ready to go home yet. I want to stay out all night, you know, because he's like, I got more things I want to do. And I remember just looking at him very frustrated, and this was my response. I said, fine, I'll stay out. This is basically the deal. I was like, I'll stay all night with you, but you got to go to church with me in the morning. Because my attitude was, if I'm going to have to suffer and go to church, you know, in this condition, you're going to suffer and go to church with me. So we did. We stayed up all night. And I would love to say we went to church hungover, but it wasn't hungover. We were still, because we had been pretty much drinking all night long. And we went to church, and it was just a normal Sunday for me. And I was kind of sitting there the whole time like, oh, he's got to be hating this, you know, because anyways, we get in the car and we go to leave, and I looked at him with kind of this smirk on my face, like, hey, and I asked, I was like, how'd you like that? And he just looked at me, he's just like, that's what I've been missing. And this is like, he's like, I want to come back. And I'm going to be completely honest. My thought was, well, that is not what I wanted you to say. You know, like my thought would be, you know, well, that sucked and whatever. So it was really funny. That's kind of the thing that then made us, he started coming to church with me. Next thing I know, we're no longer going out and drinking anymore and partying. We're going to church and helping with youth groups and doing that kind of stuff. And his sister started to come with us, and it was this weird transition that was not expecting whatsoever. You know, looking back over my life, I never have a moment where I could ever point at and say that I didn't comprehend or didn't understand the gospel, that I didn't believe. I mean, it was always extremely real to me. But the issue wasn't necessarily belief. The issue was more, it was just common. And I don't know if that's the best way to say it. Jesus, I mean, he was just always there, right? It was just a part of life. There was no, you know, growing up, there was no moment of, you know, we didn't have Jesus and then all of a sudden there's Jesus. He was just always there. He was always talked about in, say your prayers, read the Bible, go to church. It was just common. There was no excitement for me. There was no passion or why it should even really matter. And what really flipped a switch for me in my faith came through teachings of John Wesley. And Wesley came down to this finally. He met Christians that were full of life and full of the Spirit, and it changed him so much, because he's like, what do you have that I don't have? He said, I'm trying to remember exactly how, paraphrasing it, but he said, for all of my life I served, or I approached God as a servant, and with a servant mentality. He's like, but once I understood Jesus and understood the gospel and understood what this is all about, he says, I understood that I approached God as a child, not as a servant. And Wesley was like, that changed everything. This duty mentality, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how you're supposed to act, and this is the actions that you're supposed to live by, and it really hit me all of a sudden with this idea of like, well, that's me. I'm doing all this because it's what's expected. It's what's always been expected. It's how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to act. You're supposed to go to church. You're supposed to read your Bible. You're supposed to pray. You're supposed to help other people. You're supposed to do all this thing. But it was all done with a servant mentality. Like, if I don't do it, the master is going to be angry. If I don't do it, God's going to be angry. And I'm just trying to appease God. And it was through Wesley's teaching that's what struck me, was it's not about doing it as a servant. It's doing it because I'm a child. I'm a child of God. I've been accepted. I've been redeemed. I've been welcomed in my brokenness. I'm that prodigal that's been embraced. I'm that prodigal that's been received back. And it's this mentality of I want to do it now, not because I have to. I want to do this because I want to.